Welcome back to Outbreak News This Week, your source for all the news about worms and germs. Here's your host, microbiologist and editor of OutbreakNewsToday.com, Robert Harriman.
Well, welcome back to the program. Well, joining me now to talk about the recent avian influenza situation here in the United States and some related issues is Edward Rubin, MD, PhD. Dr. Rubin is the Chief Scientific Officer for Metabiota. This is a California-based provider of epidemic risk analytics. Dr. Rubin, welcome, sir, to the show.
Thank you very much, Robert. Nice to be on.
Nice to have you. Now, we've already seen quite a bit of avian influenza in Europe and Asia, and now it's popping up again in the U.S. As of the recording of this program, avian influenza or bird flu has been detected in poultry farms in Tennessee, Alabama, Wisconsin, and Kentucky. Does this come as any surprise to you?
Unfortunately, the spread of avian influenza is not a surprise at Metabiota. In fact, we reported in December on our blog that we were expecting this. And the reason is that we're seeing agricultural intensification. With regard to poultry, we're growing more birds in small spaces. And so it makes it very easy for viruses to be rapidly transferred between them. It's tinder for these outbreaks. And this is all being driven by a world demand for animal protein. And so and poultry is one of the major sources. In the last, since the 1990s, there's been a 75% increase in how many birds we grow for consumption. So it's unfortunate, but we expect that outbreaks like avian influenza are not one-off events and that they illustrate a pattern that we expect will only increase in frequency in the future.
Okay, so in 2015, in the U.S., we had a large avian influenza outbreak, and millions of poultry were slaughtered over it. Where do you see this current outbreak going? As bad as 2015? Okay,
so let's start with what we know. You mentioned the outbreak in 2014 and 15. The United States killed, over 50 million birds. And this resulted in record high costs of eggs. And a big thing we do with our poultry is ship it to other countries. Most of our countries would no longer accept our birds. And so this resulted in, a big hit to the poultry industry, several $1 billion. And so where are we now? Well, early in this month was the first reports in Tennessee, a commercial breeder with avian influenza, and this was the highly pathogenic avian influenza virus.
Right.
And what wound up, they culled 74,000 birds to stop the virus from spreading. Shortly after this, the USDA reported another farm in Tennessee with the same virus, and they culled 55,000 birds. And so just in a few weeks from the first case, the spread has continued around the country. And as you mentioned, we've seen it in Alabama and Wisconsin and to start with. And so while the ultimate reach of the present outbreak is not clear, we do believe that it will have a significant economic impact for the poultry industry.
So what you've seen so far, local and state and federal health authorities and agricultural authorities, are they handling the situation pretty well?
Yeah, I think that there is a laundry list of strict biosecurity measures that most states have, that they put in place when they see these kinds of events, and the kinds of things they do and these are things to minimize spread. And I won't go through the laundry list, but they isolate poultry from other animals. There's a fear that there will be a transfer of viruses between birds and, say, pigs or other animals. Another one is keeping areas around the poultry buildings clean and uninviting to wild birds and fowl and animals. And this is an important point because, migratory birds will transfer. Will fly to another poultry farm. or will bring viruses from faraway places. And so this is really a problem, is preventing the mixing of wild fowl from animals on farms.
Right.
You know, the blunt instrument they have is culling potentially infected birds. And this is to decrease the threat of transmission and isolating poultry from other animals. And finally, several states have also prohibited poultry exhibitions and assembly of poultry for purposes of sale. And so we believe they're doing all the right tactics for helping stop the continued spread, but I think it's a big problem.
Right. And now, just in general, the bird flu outbreak, what does all this mean to the public?
Okay, so two things. One thing is economic, and it means that we may be paying more for our eggs, you know, in a few months. Okay, the other, I think, more important issue is human health. And I think we agree with the CDC's assessment that the current risk to the public to be very low and from this particular virus. And so I don't think we're at risk for this virus transferring to humans, but I have to throw out a bit of caution here in that influenza, you know, is always changing. Mm-hmm. And exchanges genes between viruses. And you worry that the small potential of a virus that is mild and won't transfer could change. It's sort of like you're playing blackjack and you have a very poor hand, but if you have two hands and you exchange a few cards, you can convert that poor hand into a very powerful hand. And I think that that is a concern. And so therefore public health measures are continually doing surveillance to make sure this isn't occurring. But I do think that, I do agree with the CDC's assessment that the current risk is very small.
Right. And concerning transmission to humans, we have to be clear that the strain that's being seen in Tennessee is H7N9, but it's not the same virus that's circulating in China, which is infecting people.
Right.
Okay. Now, you mentioned a blog in December, and Metabiota, I found this very interesting, released the top 5 epidemic risk factors for 2017. And I would like you to discuss each, as far as how they will affect outbreak risk this coming year. And the first one you guys write about, and I'm not sure if it was you that wrote it, but somebody with Metabiota wrote there's a climate change risk.
Right. Okay, well, the reason we put this list together is that each year there are more than 15 million people worldwide die from infectious disease. And so this is, not in any order, but climate change. And what we're seeing is 2016 was the hottest year ever recorded, and 2017, we don't know yet, but it's aiming in that direction. And what we're seeing is that mosquito populations that are vectors for viruses, Zika, yellow fever, and dengue, are moving to locations they previously didn't occupy. They're moving to southern Florida, to Texas. And so we expect to see more of these kinds of diseases that we previously didn't see in continental U.S. And so that's one of our, increasing risks, we think.
And the climate change risk, would that also affect other vectors like ticks?
Yeah. And we've been interested in these viral vectors, but yes, I think various, we're changing arthropods or moving in places that they didn't previously occupy. So diseases that we didn't see one place now are appearing.
Sure. The second one you guys write about is the population migration risk.
Yeah, and so this is not one you'd immediately jump to, but we're seeing due to civil conflicts like what's occurring in Syria and the Middle East, as well as Nigeria with Boko Haram, it's causing big populations to be displaced. And connected with that, there are normal public health activities that are disrupted, vaccination, immunization. And so preventable diseases like polio and measles are suddenly beginning to appear at a frequency we didn't see previously due to these disordered population migrations.
Yeah. All right. And another thing that's going on in Syria due to this is leishmaniasis is up too.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
The third one you guys write about is the human encroachment risk. What is that?
Okay, so about 75% of emerging infectious diseases come from animals. And viruses that are in animal reservoirs that jump to humans. The AIDS virus, Ebola, Zika, MERS, most of the ones that we hear about were initially in an animal reservoir and then jumped to humans. And so there are other viruses in animal reservoirs. And as the human population grows, and there's 7.3 billion people on the planet, we're living places and interacting with animals in ways that we never did before, giving greater opportunities for the mixing of humans and animals, as well as the viruses that jump from animals to humans. In addition, extraction industries to power our cell phones, to power our cars, we're beginning to move into places to extract minerals and oil that we hadn't been before. And so again, it's giving an opportunity for humans to interact with wildlife in ways that increase the opportunities for viruses to jump from wildlife to humans. And then finally, travel, global transportation. What used to occur in a little village in the Congo Basin and stayed in the Congo Basin, little outbreaks, now are getting a bus and going to an airport and flying on a plane to a city with 10 million people. And so I think this is another way in which human encroachment and changes that occur with modern transportation is increasing that risk.
Sure. The fourth one we've pretty much discussed already with the bird flu is the global agriculture risk.
Yeah, and so that I think is it. To feed these 7.3 billion people, and the appetite for animal proteins is really driving an intensification of agriculture, and cows and chickens and all kinds of animals are being grown in small settings, dense settings. It's sort of, in many ways, I think infectious disease outbreaks are a little bit like fires. If you have lots of dry tinder around, you will see fires more frequently, and they'll be bigger. And I think the same thing, that these intensive agriculture serves as tinder for viruses that happen to, come into them. And so I think these things are also a breeding ground for outbreaks.
Sure. And the last one is something that's in the media more and more frequently, is the antibiotic-resistant bacteria risk. Right.
And so I don't need to add that much to this.
Right.
I think we're all aware that in the beginning mid of last century, we developed antibiotics, and it changed the way we interacted with microbes. And that little infections you could treat, and instead of losing a leg, you just put a salve on it. And I think that what has happened is that the excessive use of antimicrobials, and as well as using them in animal feed, has led to bacteria developing defenses, antibiotic resistance. So progressively we have fewer and fewer defenses, and new antibiotics are not coming on the market at a rate that could mitigate the increase in antimicrobial resistance. And so I think this is a problem that's only going to get bigger.
Sure. All right, Dr. Rubin, I want to go ahead and give you some time, and I'm interested myself in listen to you discuss the work that you guys are doing at Metabiota.
Okay, well, that's great. And let me first of all say it. We call it Metabiota.
Oh, okay.
And you can visit our website, metabiota.com, and you can learn more about us. But anyway, let me tell you what we are. I think we're a little different. We occupy a very interesting and unusual space in the field of infectious diseases, and I think we're probably a little different from what your listeners are used to hearing about. Okay, we're all about quantitating and assessing the health and economic impact and risk of infectious disease outbreaks. Prior to the kind of work that we're doing, infectious disease outbreaks are very much viewed as black swan events, events that couldn't be quantitatively assessed. What Metabiota has done is, with fields of scientists, epidemiologists, people with great deal of ground truthing experience, data scientists that have collected 100 years of every outbreak around the planet, have looked at transportation routes, have looked for public health capabilities, have put all this data into developed advanced analytics around this data, and then done modeling. We've been able to help our customers understand epidemic risk. And connected with our efforts on quantitating the risk to humans and livestock for outbreaks and epidemics, we're working with insurance companies to help them develop products and policies that can transfer epidemic risks as well as incentivize activities that lower the risk. And the last point is a very interesting point in that, we have quantitated risks to humans, car accidents and fires. And as a result of that, there is an incentivization to lower that risk. And so, seat belts and airbags came from pushed by the incentivization that occurred with insurance companies. Same thing occurs with fire alarms and sprinkler systems. And so that's really, I think, one of the things is that there are things you can do to decrease epidemic risk, and insurance and transferring that risk incentivizes behaviors that will lower that risk. And so my background is very much, I've been an academic scientist most of my career. It amazes me that I'm talking about insurance, but I think it represents really one of the most powerful ways of incentivizing behaviors that will decrease the impact of infectious diseases.
Sure, fascinating. Dr. Rubin, give us the website one more time.
Metabiota.com, Metabiota.com.
Very good. Well, thank you, Dr. Edward Rubin, for your time and expertise, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.